One of the number one things you need as a business or creator is visibility. If your audience can't see or hear what you do, it almost doesn't exist. That's why DiffWorks is your one-stop shop for all of your multimedia needs. I'm talking video, audio, photography, graphic design, headshots, websites. They do it all. So if you're looking for multimedia that'll give you a competitive edge, check out DiffWorks and book a consultation at staydiff.com. Hey, this is Kahja Elliott, Bronx born and raised, ATL made, Bay Area becoming, and this is the As Told By podcast. Welcome back. We are here again with a new episode of the As Told By podcast. I am on location again. Today I'm coming to you from beautiful, picturesque Marin County. I don't get out here often enough. This is a lovely place. But I'm here nonetheless today talking with Meryl Muldoon. Meryl is the U.S. brand director for French Bloom, which was recently named USA Today's #1 non-alcoholic wine less than 2 years after their U.S. launch, created to allow people to celebrate big and small moments with equal pleasure with their collection of alcohol-free, organic French sparkling wine dedicated to those who want to gather their loved ones and celebrate without moderation. Welcome to the As Told By podcast, Meryl.
Thank you for having me, Kahja. What a wonderful brand introduction. You did that better than I could do.
Listen, I found that online and I loved just the energy of what that communicated. You know, we are including people. We are leaving no person behind.
That is true.
I'm here for it. Well, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. First of all, this is lovely. I'm sitting in front of the most picturesque window. There's so much greenery and trees, and it's quiet, and I love it. Do I need to move to Marin next?
Yes. Please be my neighbor.
Be my neighbor. Well, yeah, let's jump into it. So I mentioned that French Bloom is a brand of non-alcoholic wine. So tell us a little bit, and we'll get into more about that, but let's start off with talking about the brand philosophy.
Absolutely, Kahja. And you actually described the brand better than I could do, I think, when you first introduced this podcast. So, yeah, we really, French Bloom is all about celebration without limitation. Regardless of your relationship with alcohol, you should be able to feel part of the party and choose, right? It's really power of choice. So, cheers to that.
Just a little bit about how I discovered French Bloom, all by accident. I feel like there's been several times this season where I've said, I was in Chicago this summer for James Beard, and I utilized the time. I was mixing and mingling and looking and meeting. And you all were one of the people who I came upon at the reception following the Chef and Restaurant Awards. So it was in, I believe it's called Union Station, huge space. There was so much food and alcohol flowing from every corner and crevice of the room. And, as I was just kind of making my way around the different tables, I came across the French Bloom table. And, like I said, there was, wine and cocktails. And I came past the table and the woman there explained to me, oh, these are non-alcoholic wines. And I almost was like, oh, okay, thanks, bye. Because there was wine everywhere.
Yeah.
But she walked me through and had me sample, and she had me hooked. They were so amazing. They were so tasty, but I love the branding of it, right? It was very upscale. It was very elegant, and it stood to any other wine presentation that was happening in the room. So I couldn't wait to exchange information and learn more about the brand. And, fast forward a few months now, here we are talking. So I'm glad that the listenership of the podcast is going to get to know a little bit more about you all as well.
We're so excited that you found us. And yeah, that was such a memorable moment in Chicago. Such a fantastic culinary city, and to have all the chefs and restaurants in from all around the U.S. Great exposure for us. But really just thrilled to be a part of it and thrilled to have met you there as well.
Yeah, very good. So now talk about the founder story a bit. I know that this company, French Bloom, is founded by two women who, through their friendship, kind of moved into this space together. So talk a little bit about the founder story.
Yeah, this is one of the kind of key parts of what drew me to the brand. Maggie Farjeon-Tattinger and then Constance Jablonski, they're both living in New York. Maggie was pregnant with twins at the time, and she was also in a big role for Michelin. So she was the international director, pregnant with twins. You have a lot of wining and dining. Constance Jablonski is a French model, and the two of them as friends kind of had a similar challenge. They both felt that something was missing when it came to their, celebration and socializing, right? You have Constance who, working as a model, you often have really early wake-up calls for hair and makeup. You always have to look fresh-faced, but you also have this, really rigorous social schedule where you're sort of expected to be out networking, and oftentimes that means drinking alcohol. And for Maggie, being pregnant with twins, she had mentioned this truly felt like the first time in her life where she was like excluded from the party, right? Because she'd be drinking water or there wouldn't really be any options that were elegant. So the two of them started this concept of French Bloom, and it's named as such. We're French origins, right? So we're wine first and foremost, right? Organic wine that's de-alcoholized out of the south of France. So we are French, and the idea of like bloom is sort of like you're being able to bloom into the best version of yourself when you drink this beverage. And they named it French Bloom for the English market, thinking that this would, or the American market, thinking that this would be the primary market for them. But then it really took off in France. So the headquarters, and brand home is in Paris. And we really thought that it was going to be an American primary market, but it really took off in France. So here we are. We entered the US about 2 years ago.
Okay. It's been a busy 2 years. And I guess it's a little bit surprising. I can understand the surprise that it would take off in France, because France is one of the homes of wine, right? And very nuanced wine and very highly regarded wine. So to be able to have this product be received well there and to take off well there is like, hey, if we can do it here, where can't we do it?
Yeah. And yeah, for the French, it's, to your point, it's the home of wine, like full strength wine. So the fact that people wanted to, kind of get on this trend. In fact, Emily in Paris just had their episode 4, I believe, of the most recent season. There's an article written that she actually got it wrong, because she, in the show, talks about France being very unresponsive to alcohol-free wines, but in fact, it's in reality the converse. It's surprisingly well adapted in the market.
They knew a good thing when they tasted it.
I think so.
So I like that you mentioned that this is de-alcoholized wine. And I want to learn a little bit. I don't even fully know the scope of that. So let's talk about the process of developing non-alcoholic wines, and how is that process different or the same as developing traditional wine, or is it?
Absolutely. So first of all, French Bloom, this is 4 years of R&D in development, right? So it's taken an awfully long time to get it right and to really hone in on that secret sauce. So really, we kind of have paved the way in terms of know-how in this de-alcoholization space. So it's all about the raw materials that you start with first, right? So because the process of de-alcoholization, no matter how you do it, There's a couple of different methods. It strips away 60 to 80% of the final aromas and sensory experience of the wine. So we need to start with the right raw materials first. This is where we picture yourself sort of in like that very picturesque south of France in the Languedoc. And you're getting a lot of sun there. So the grapes reach a really nice level of ripeness. So between the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir grapes that are grown there, we start with a base that has just kind of broader shoulders than your kind of typical, like especially if you think of Champagne in the converse, that's a very northerly wine region in France, and you get a little bit more of an austere grape for that elegance. But again, because we need to start with a stronger base, we pick this region which has more sunlight, and the grapes become really nice and ripe. So we take organic wine, right, from the Languedoc, and then we end up de-alcoholizing it in a process known as vacuum distillation. And once we are able to remove the alcohol in that process, we then go through the process of rebuilding, right? So it's all about starting with a great raw material, de-alcoholizing, and then rebuilding the wines. And then you have the gasification for the sparkling portion. So it really comes down to, again, it's like this 4 years of R&D, finding the right sort of secret sauce. And we now have our, Les Blancs and Les Rosés, which are our core range. But then we also released one that we're very, very excited about this past March called La Cuvée. This one, I come from the Champagne world. So I used to manage brands like Krug and Ruinart and Veuve Clicquot. So Champagne is very close to my heart. And there's nothing really, or hadn't been on the market, anything even close to like that complexity of a Champagne experience. We answered that need in the market with La Cuvée. So this is a more complex, mature tasting, gastronomic wine. And I think that really speaks to how French Bloom is pushing the boundaries when it comes to really elegant products in the NA space.
Okay, so this is so fascinating, right, to me, because I'll be honest, going to family events and just social events, usually when people are looking to have a non-alcoholic option that's not water, but still kind of puts people in the mind of wine, it's that sparkling cider that we all know and love. I won't call out a brand, but it's that sparkling cider we all know and love that we see in the grocery store. And so I love that you have talked about this process was treated very similarly to the way that wine and champagne is produced. This is not juice that is being kind of processed, right? Or distilled, if you will, if that's the right word, in the same way that wine is. It actually is a process of the de-alcoholization of wine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No juice here, y'all.
No juice here.
All right. So then take us on like a detailed walk through the collection. So I mentioned I was able to try the 3 varieties while I was there in Chicago. And I love sparkling, right? Ideally, like I'm a sparkling rosé girl, but I love all sparkling, right? I love like Domaine, Chandon. That's like one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what I was comparing it against. And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised at how good they were. So take us through like the profiles of the 3 offerings that you have.
Of course. So I mentioned that we have, Les Blancs and Les Rosés. So these are sort of our core range. And Les Blancs is 100% organic, Chardonnay from the south of France. And then the Rosé is a combination of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And then we have the La Cuvée, which is this complex aged gastronomic wine that is alcohol free. So the Les Blancs for me is it's more of like the luscious style. Like you get this more. It has a broader sense to it, and I think it actually on its own it's fantastic with. I think of like a tarte aux pommes or like a frisée salad. Stone fruit, chicken, or like a hamburger, quite frankly.
Be creative.
Yeah. And that to me, it also works really well in cocktails too. So because it has a bit of a fuller kind of and more luscious base. And then we have our Les Rosés. I don't know if you had a preference between the two when you tried them yourself. You said you're more of a rosé gal. So
yeah, it's hard to remember if I had a preference. I know I enjoyed the two of them.
Yeah.
Very much. The cuvée was the wild card. I remember thinking that. Yes.
Yes. It definitely in a lane of its own, I think. Mm-hmm. And so the rosé, I have a slight preference for the rosé. It's just a little bit more delicate. It's a bit drier, more mineral driven. This is something I'll love with like a Neapolitan style pizza or sashimi, a gorgeous like thin beef carpaccio with like capers on top. Is it lunchtime? I think so. So we then have with the La Cuvée, this is something coming from, again, my background being more in the world of champagne. This to me, when I first tasted this creation, I was blown away to the point that I actually ended up ordering some unagi sashimi to have with it, because there was there's a maturity and a complexity to this wine that is just, there's nothing like it, especially in the alcohol-free world. So it's like nutty, brioche, there's a salinity to it. There's almost like there's definitely like this umami kind of like richness, and it holds the bubble really well. It's truly, in my opinion, it's our way of bridging the gap between sort of that Gen Z alcohol-free, like ready to drink, in a can type NA world, right? And like takes us into the world of like fine gastronomy.
Yes.
And that's where, we're the non-alcoholic partner, with some of the James Beard events, and then Michelin as well, in the US and around the globe. And to me, this is the first of its kind where, looking at our launch events in March, we were with this stunning, Providence restaurant in LA, 2 Michelin star, with a green star. They're focused on seafood. And then we partnered with Junsik in New York, this incredible Korean restaurant, 2 Michelin star out of New York. And it's the 2 restaurants delivered such unique menu pairings with the La Cuvée. And to me, being at these events, I just thought to myself, like, finally, I can have an alcohol-free experience that's like a 1 + 1 = 3 gastronomic experience at the same time. So that's our kind of current range. And then we have Blanc and Rosé in half bottles. We just launched Les Blanc in a Magnum.
Oh, nice.
That's going to be coming to the U.S. in October. Okay. And then we're also launching early next year an Extra Brut. So a even drier style offering.
Okay. You know what? As you're saying that, one of the things I love about it, it's not intentional. It just happens to align with my preference. I keep learning that I'm not a red girl. I keep trying, right? I keep trying red blends, dry reds, not so dry reds. And I'm just finding maybe you just don't like red. So I love that this is like a profile of offerings where I'm not excluding anyone. Like I'm enjoying all of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Good stuff. Talk about what the advent of non-alcoholic wines have been in the industry. So in researching for this conversation, I found information, as far back as like 10 years. But, how have makers been approaching this space where they're creating offerings that need to stand strongly to traditional versions?
Yeah, well, it's funny. So in preparing for this talk with you as well, Kahja, I was doing some research, and apparently back during even Prohibition, there were beers that were really low in alcohol. So that's like early 1900s. And then you kind of fast forward to like the 1980s where you had then like, do you know O'Doul's?
I've heard,
like,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So which is, that had been up until recent times, like the option for those that wanted to sort of be a part of the party, but have a similar experience. But yuck. It's like no good. So, and then as of recent, like fast forwarding from sort of, okay, you have O'Doul's and then you have O'Doul's and that's it. So as of about 2015, you have Seedlip that came on the market, which was a kind of like spirit alternative.
Oh, I don't know Seedlip. Okay.
I think Diageo owns that one. And then it's just been, to your point, like in the past sort of 10 years, you're seeing some of these offerings trickle out. It's ready to drinks, and beer has done a great job of offering a similar sensory experience with the alcohol-free option as the full alcohol option. Mm-hmm. However, this is just a personal note. I've tasted probably 30 or 40 alcohol-free wines, have yet to find one that resembles to me that complexity of the sensory experience that a full-strength offering has. That's why you see a lot of these ready-to-drinks, sort of botanical options, tea-based options. And to me, French Bloom, one of the reasons why I joined the company was I actually felt like this brand was sort of the closest experientially to its full strength counterparts, right? So that's sort of how we see that timeline, right? It was very stagnant from, prohibition, obviously, with this like one beer that was sort of low alcohol, like 0.5%. And then in the 80s, you have O'Doul's. And then finally, you're seeing this renaissance where you have like a full range of brands from, wine that's de-alcoholized to these other alternatives. Yeah. So that's as far as I've seen it for and now you're seeing brands really popping up all over the world.
Yeah, and not just wine, but also in spirits.
Yeah,
as well. I recently read a CNN article, August of this year, about the emergence of sober bars, which I thought, isn't this interesting? And one of the more interesting perspectives from the article stated, quote, "Alcohol is definitely having a cigarette moment since at least 2016. We're coming upon a decade of people really evaluating alcohol's place in our life. And it's just no longer accepted that people consume a bunch of alcohol to have a good time," end quote. I laughed at a cigarette moment.
Yeah, alcohol's not cool anymore.
Wow. It's just like, who knew? But I thought, first of all, I just thought the whole premise of a sober bar was just interesting from an industry perspective, but I would just love to be a fly on the wall and see what the social environment of a sober bar is.
Yeah.
But I love that they seem to be creating community around, hey, if you're not doing that, you don't have to be excluded from this experience. Right. There's that experience, socially speaking, of coming to a bar and sitting in proximity with people and talking to the bartender and music and all the things. So it's like, hey, you can still be a part of this whole experience, just minus this thing.
Oh, yeah. And I think even more than going to a sober bar, you have this idea of moderation that's able to be, it's the responsibility of, restaurants and hotels and retailers to be able to offer anybody the ability to choose their experience with alcohol at any given moment, right? So if you go to a regular bar with your friends, right, because you might not get your entire group of friends to go to a sober bar, right, and you may decide to go elsewhere, we're now just seeing so much attention to curating a portion of your menu for the moderating consumer. So you don't have to be fully sober. You might be somebody like myself. I might have a glass of Burgundy first and then a glass of French Bloom second. Or I might look for an alcohol-free cocktail. I might look for a moderate cocktail where we mix French Bloom in with a full-strength tequila we've seen. I mean, so you have this full spectrum, and it's not just, all or nothing, right? It's by and large, our primary consumer, and I'm not just speaking for French Bloom, but I'm speaking of sort of the whole no and low space, is that moderator.
I love what you said about it's not an all or nothing, right? Like I love a good French 75, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you can just swap some of this in, right? I don't know from a caloric or a nutritional standpoint what the breakdown is between this and wine, but just definitely a swap in or swap out if you want to adjust the amount of alcohol you're having in a night. Or like you said, I'm going to start with my old standbys and then move into something else as the rest of the night evolves.
Yeah. And talk about calories. You mentioned it's actually a very favorable swap because French Bloom is about 1/5 of the calories as a traditional glass of wine. So it is favorable. Yes.
Listen, I had no idea. I was going on taste alone, and branding. Just quick sidebar. I love the branding. I'll make sure I link out to that when the episode airs, but people stop by and take a look. Like it made me feel I felt relaxed looking at the branding. I felt like this is what I want to pull out if I want to have a high-end good time.
Yes.
That was the feeling that I had.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm here for the French Bloom. I feel like I answered this a little bit, but I will ask the next question. Who do you think, so this is a little bit of a two-part question.
Yeah.
Who's the market for this? Like when I'm dining out, I don't typically, or I've not yet to this point come across a lot of dining experiences where I am offered a non-alcoholic wine option. So is the market for this like B2B transitioning into B2C, or, is it really more driven to B2C? Why would a standard sparkling wine drinker choose this product?
That's a really good question. So we are seeing a lot more reach as we get more mature in the market and as the category matures a bit itself in the high-end restaurants, in hotels, in bars. So there is that sort of on-premise approach, right, with restaurants, hotels. We're seeing more and more retail adoption as well. Certainly e-commerce is big because we are alcohol-free. You don't have to worry about like all the shipping laws and things like that. Yeah. But the face of our customer, it's so interesting because it's like anybody and everyone. It's actually quite hard to define a buyer persona because I'm like, well, it's like 12 different categories. You have, when the brand was first concepted by Maggie and Constance, Maggie really thought this is made for people just like me. People that might be pregnant, need a different option. Maybe it's for the sober person, right, or the religious abstainer. But what we've actually found in practice, and this goes across markets around the world, is that it's anyone and everyone. Like it is me. It is you. Like it is the person that, is out for dinner that wants to start with a glass of wine, but doesn't want the second one because they have a meeting in the morning. Right. And that's where we see, it's really hard to define because everybody has this kind of flexible, I shouldn't say everybody, but many people are developing this more flexible sense to their consumption patterns. The classification is like the moderating consumer, right? So, and there's a report published by the IWSR just a couple of days ago that millennials are actually, so 21% of millennial consumers are drinking both no alcohol and full strength alcohol, right? Which I think really speaks to this sense of the customer that is moderating their intake. 31% of total drinkers say that they are actively moderating and have not had alcohol for at least like 1 month at a time. So there's just all of this data that's pointing to this lifestyle of conscious consumption. You're choosing when you want your full strength offering, whether wine or spirits, and you're choosing when you have your alcohol free. So we're here to fit whatever that customer is deciding at that given point in time, right?
Yeah. So you don't have to be beholden to things like, I know like Sober October is right around the corner, Dry January. You get to decide how much, when you want to bring this in. But I really do encourage folks, mix it up. You absolutely won't be, not happy that you did. I absolutely will be mixing French Bloom into not just like when I want to have like that straight sparkling experience, but also I have really started to look at these like wine cocktails, right? That have become very popular. And so as I just try to mix and make things at home and try different things, this is absolutely the kind of product, right, that I think is so interesting to bring in and sub in and think about how you can implement it into what you've already gotten.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. You mentioned the founders and their stories. With this kind of product, do you believe there's a unique perspective that comes from being a female-founded brand?
Yeah, it's really, when I think about other female-founded brands that we've been able to partner with, it's like you have the Webster, the fashion platform, Moda Operandi, Goop. It's for us, utilizing this platform of female entrepreneurship is a really exciting way to kind of like activate the brand with other partners.
All right. Come on, ladies, and activate brands. I'm here for it. Tell folks where they can find out more about French Bloom, and then most importantly, where they can find and get their hands on some French Bloom.
Absolutely, Kahja. So the first place that I'd go to learn about the brand, our social channels as well as our website. And I mentioned earlier, with e-commerce, because we are alcohol free, we are able to ship direct. So our website is our brand home and a great place to shop as well. We're found around the country in locations, and we actually have a where to enjoy section on our website, which is great. You can enter your zip code and see where the closest restaurant, hotel, retailer is to you. Nice. We're at Erewhon. If you're in Southern California, they've been with us since the beginning. And RH, Restoration Hardware, across the country in all of their locations. So yeah, we're widely found, and I would say the first place to go is our website.
Okay, I love it. Well, I will be sure to post all of that with the show notes. Thank you again so much for talking to me today. Yeah. I will absolutely be one of those people placing an order. So I can't wait to kind of have a second experience with the brand in a little more relaxed environment in my home, and to find all these fun things to do with it. So thanks again for talking with me today.
Thank you, Kahja.
Yeah. If you want to keep up with me in between episodes, you can find me on Instagram at Hey K in the Bay. That has been this week's episode of the As Told by podcast from beautiful Marin County. And I will see you all with a new episode soon.